On the cosmopolitan space station orbiting Terex 3, cultures not just from different lands but from different planets mingled and merged, creating a melting pot of ideas, customs, and occasionally biologies. One of the most recent additions to this eclectic mix was Mira, a Lalantian from a planet where reproduction was clinical and devoid of physical contact, managed entirely in laboratory settings. Mira, with her ethereal glow and eyes that shimmered with a silver luminescence, had been assigned to work in the Department of Human Studies, an ironic posting considering her disdain for the messy, often illogical ways of human beings. She found most human rituals puzzling, none more so than their methods of reproduction, which she had studied extensively, but still found ludicrous. She often shared her candid opinions with her human colleague, Dr. John Harris, an expert in exobiology, who found her bewilderment both amusing and enlightening. Today they were scheduled to give a joint presentation on the comparative reproductive strategies of various spacefaring species. As they prepared in the conference room, with its large windows overlooking the swirling blue gases of Terex 3, Mira couldn't resist reigniting their ongoing debate. "John, I still cannot comprehend how you humans have managed to survive as a species with such an inefficient reproductive strategy. It's utterly bizarre," she said, her voice tinged with both amusement and incredulity. John chuckled, arranging his notes on the podium. "Mira, what you find bizarre, we find beautiful. It's all about emotional connection and continuity of our species through personal relationships. It's not just biological. It's deeply social and emotional." Myra shook her head, her silver hair catching the light. "Emotions seem to complicate rather than simplify. In Lalantis, we prioritize efficiency. Our methods ensure genetic diversity and optimal health outcomes without the chaos of your system." The room began to fill with other scientists and scholars, a mix of humans and aliens, each with their own unique features and expressions of curiosity. As they settled into their seats, the buzz of conversation filled the air, mixing human laughter with alien tones. "Our system might be chaotic, but it's also full of surprises and joys you can't quantify or predict," John replied, giving her a playful smile. Mira was about to respond when the moderator called the room to order, and their presentation began. She presented the Lalantian approach, highlighting its precision and the technological marvels they used to engineer the next generation. John followed, discussing the human approach, emphasizing the importance of familial bonds and the psychological benefits of their reproductive methods. After the presentation, as the room applauded, a young human woman approached Mira with a question. "Dr. Mira, have you ever experienced any human customs firsthand? Maybe not reproduction, but anything else that's typically human?" Mira was taken aback by the question. She had always maintained a professional distance from the more immersive aspects of human culture. "I have observed many customs, but I haven't participated. It's not necessary for my research." The woman smiled warmly. "Maybe not necessary, but it could be enlightening. Why not try something simple, like sharing a meal or celebrating a festival with us? Experiencing something is often the best way to understand it." The idea unsettled Mira. She was comfortable in her realm of data and observation, yet the invitation gnawed at her curiosity. Maybe there was more to learn from the humans than she could glean from her detached observations. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. "Perhaps I could join you for this meal. It would provide further insights into your social bonding rituals." John, overhearing the conversation, clapped his hands together in delight. "That's the spirit, Mira. You might find our chaos more interesting than you expect." Mira's first foray into the human social scene took her to a bustling marketplace on the lower deck of the space station, a place John referred to as the best spot to dive into human culture head first. The air was thick with the aromas of exotic spices and the sizzle of street food being cooked on open grills. People of all species mingled, but humans dominated the scene, laughing loudly and gesturing wildly as they bartered with vendors. John led her to a food stall adorned with strings of bright lights, where a man was serving something called tacos. Mira watched with a mix of fascination and apprehension as the cook expertly flipped a sizzling concoction of meat and vegetables onto soft, round dough bases. "Here, try one," John urged, handing her a taco filled with a spicy, fragrant mixture. Mira took the taco, her silver eyes wide. Biting into it, she was surprised by the burst of flavors. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced in her controlled, flavor-synthesized diet on Lelantis. The mix of spices, the warmth of the freshly made dough, and the tang of the sauce was astonishing. "This is quite complex," she admitted, her usual composure slipping into genuine surprise. John laughed, watching her. "Food's a big part of what makes us human. It's more than sustenance. It's pleasure, it's community, it's heritage." As they moved through the crowd, Mira noticed the varying interactions among the humans. Families sharing meals, friends laughing over drinks, couples holding hands. The emotional connections were palpable, so unlike the sterile interactions of her homeworld. She felt an unexpected twinge, a yearning to understand these connections more deeply. Their next stop was at a stall where an old woman was selling handmade jewelry. She explained each piece's significance to John, who translated for Mira. Each design represented different aspects of human lore, stories of love, triumph, and tragedy. Mira touched a bracelet adorned with symbols of Earth's oceans. "Your artifacts have stories. We do not cherish objects this way," she said, her voice tinged with a newfound respect. As the day turned to evening, the market lights twinkled on, casting a warm glow over everything. Mira found herself entranced by the human capacity for beauty and celebration. She watched children chasing each other with glowing toys, their laughter ringing clear. John noticed her attention to the children and smiled. "Kids are the best of us, really. They represent hope for the future, something we strive to protect and nurture." Mira looked at him, her mind racing with new questions and insights. "And is this hope not vulnerable? Does it not frighten you to place so much of your future in such fragile beings?" "It does," John agreed, his eyes reflecting the market lights. "But that's the beauty of it. We grow, adapt, and evolve through our vulnerabilities. Our children learn to do the same." As they left the market, Mira felt a shift within herself. The chaotic, vibrant life of humans was beginning to weave its spell around her. She was still a scientist, driven by logic and data, but tonight, under the starlit sky of the space station, she felt a crack in her scientific armor, a small opening towards something profoundly illogical yet irresistibly human. The following weeks found Mira accompanying John to various human gatherings, each experience layering her understanding with new textures of human emotion and complexity. Tonight was particularly significant. They were attending a traditional human wedding, an event John described as a pinnacle of human emotional expression. As they entered the celebration hall, Mira was struck by the beauty of the decorations. Flowers everywhere, lights strung like stars across the ceiling, and music that seemed to stir something deep within her. The bride and groom stood at the front, exchanging vows. Mira listened intently as they promised to cherish each other for a lifetime, their voices thick with emotion. "This," John whispered, leaning over to Mira, "is the essence of our illogical nature. Love, Mira, it's not efficient, but it's powerful." Mira watched the couple seal their vows with a kiss, a custom she found particularly perplexing. The applause that followed was hearty and filled with joy. As the couple walked down the aisle, hands clasped, Mira felt an unusual sensation, a warmth that seemed to echo the joy of the room. This was more than a biological process. It was a ritual binding not just two individuals, but entire communities. At the reception, Mira observed the interactions with a new perspective. The laughter, the dancing, the way stories were shared. It all wove a complex tapestry of relationships that extended beyond mere survival. It was about thriving, about finding joy in the connections. "Come on, you have to dance," John urged, pulling her gently towards the dance floor after noticing her interest in the rhythmic movements of the guests. "I don't know how," she protested mildly yet curious. "Just follow my lead," he said, and soon they were moving to the music. The physicality of it was unfamiliar to Mira, but she found herself responding to the rhythm, carried by the wave of the music and the infectious enthusiasm around her. As the night progressed, Mira found herself laughing freely, a sound she wasn't used to making. She was beginning to understand the human saying John had quoted once, "To feel is to live." Indeed, she was feeling something profound and unsettling, yet exhilarating. Later, sitting at a table with a group of John's friends, Mira listened to them share stories about the bride and groom. Each story was a thread in the larger narrative of their lives, painted with affection and humor. "It seems every human is a story," Mira remarked to John as they watched an old couple dance slowly in the middle of the floor. "Exactly," John replied. "And every story is a life. Our lives are our stories, and our stories are our lives. They intertwine, they conflict, but in the end, they create something beautiful." Mira thought about her own life, her own story. Until now it had been clinical, defined by data and research. But here, amidst these humans, her story was beginning to change. She was no longer just an observer. She was becoming a participant. As the celebration continued into the night, Mira felt a profound sense of connection to these strange, emotional beings. For the first time, she understood the human term joy, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. This night, this celebration of union, was a turning point for her, a moment when the human condition began to make a strange, wonderful sense. As autumn turned to winter on the space station, the change brought a new rhythm to life aboard. Mira found herself increasingly involved in human social activities, a stark contrast to her previous routine of solitary research. One chilly evening, John invited her to join a group heading to a nearby planet for a winter festival, celebrated by a human colony there. The festival, known for its stunning ice sculptures and glowing lanterns, promised another deep dive into human culture. They traveled by shuttle, a small craft that wove through the stars. Mira watched the universe whirl by, the cosmic dance of lights and shadows. As they approached the planet, its icy surface glittered beneath the starlight, a vast canvas of white and blue. Arriving at the festival, Mira was greeted by the sight of massive sculptures carved from ice, depicting various aspects of human mythology and history. Each sculpture was lit from within, casting a soft light that illuminated the surrounding snow. Families gathered around, their breath visible in the cold air, laughing and pointing at the figures. "It's beautiful," Mira admitted, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "The artistry is remarkable." "It's not just for beauty," John explained as they walked among the sculptures. "These are stories, Mira. Legends and fairy tales passed down through generations. They're teaching tools and part of our heritage." Mira touched the cold surface of a sculpture depicting a phoenix rising from ashes, its wings spread wide. "A rebirth," she mused. "Continuous renewal, much like your species." "Exactly," John agreed. "We find resilience in our stories. They remind us of our capacity to endure and evolve." As night deepened, they joined a group gathered around a bonfire. Someone handed Mira a stick with a marshmallow, explaining the tradition of toasting them over the fire. Mira watched the marshmallow swell and brown, a simple pleasure yet wholly novel. "Marshmallows," John chuckled. "Not exactly a significant cultural artifact, but part of the fun." Mira tasted the gooey, sweet concoction, smiling at the simplicity of the pleasure it brought. The group around the fire shared stories of past festivals, of winters endured and celebrated, their narratives weaving a tapestry rich with human emotion and resilience. Later, they watched a fireworks display, bursts of color lighting up the night sky, each explosion a momentary starburst of joy. Mira felt the collective anticipation and excitement of the crowd, a shared human experience that pulsed like a heartbeat. During the return trip, Mira sat quietly, reflecting on the festival, the stories told in ice, the shared warmth around the fire, the collective joy under the fireworks. She was beginning to see how these threads formed the fabric of human experience. Emotion, she realized, was not just a byproduct of existence, but a fundamental aspect of it. Back on the space station, as she compiled her notes and observations, Mira found herself integrating not just data, but stories. her own and those of the people she had met. The emotional landscapes she had once dismissed as inefficient were now revealing their intricate, essential patterns. Mira's research, once purely scientific, had evolved into a broader study of life itself. As she prepared for her next presentation to the Interspecies Council, she planned not just to share her findings, but to tell the story of her own transformation amidst the chaotic, vibrant tapestry of human culture. Her perspective had shifted. She was no longer an outsider looking in, but a participant woven into the narrative she once observed from a distance. The council chamber was filled with representatives from various species, each with their own unique forms and cultural backgrounds. Mira stood at the podium, her luminescent eyes scanning the audience, a mixture of anticipation and resolve in her posture. Today, she was not just presenting her research, she was sharing a transformation, a metamorphosis that had shifted her understanding of not only humanity, but of life itself. As many of you know, my initial observations of human culture were skeptical at best, Mira began, her voice steady and clear. I found their emotional intricacies to be inefficient and bewildering. However, my recent engagements with their culture have led me to a profound realization. She clicked a device, and images of the Winter Festival appeared behind her. Glowing ice sculptures, families gathered around bonfires, the fireworks display. These experiences, though seemingly chaotic, are deeply integrated into what it means to be human. They are not mere activities. They are expressions of life, affirmations of existence. A murmur ran through the chamber, some nods of agreement mingling with skeptical tilts of heads. Mira continued, undeterred. I observed not only what humans do, but why they do it. Their rituals and celebrations are not just for enjoyment. They reinforce social bonds, transmit cultural values, and foster a sense of community and continuity. She shifted the presentation to a personal anecdote. I participated in a tradition of toasting marshmallows, a simple act, yet it encapsulated much of what I've come to understand about humanity. It was an act of sharing, of warmth, not just from the fire but from the people around it. The next slide showed a graph, but not of data points or genetic algorithms. Instead, it depicted emotional responses and cultural engagement metrics. Here you see a representation of the emotional bonds formed through shared experiences. These connections, though intangible, are as vital as the genetic ties that bind other species. A delegate from a robotic species, whose members valued logic and data above all, raised a question. Dr. Mira, how do you quantify these emotional experiences in terms of evolutionary advantage? Mira addressed the question with a nod. An excellent query. Emotional resilience, as demonstrated by humans, enhances adaptability. It allows for rapid, dynamic responses to environmental and social changes. Moreover, it can be argued that emotional depth contributes to a species' ability to innovate and solve complex problems through collaborative efforts. The room fell silent, considering her words. Mira took the opportunity to drive her point home. In my own transformation, I found that embracing these human experiences has not only enriched my understanding, but has also enhanced my scientific pursuits. The integration of emotion into our data can lead to more holistic and adaptive approaches in all our fields. As she concluded, the images behind her faded to a picture of her and John at the festival, laughing together, a moment captured in time. I propose that we, as a council, look not only to the biological and technological advancements of species, but also to the cultural and emotional practices that define them. In understanding each other's ways of life, we may find key insights into the broader universe. The applause that followed was not just polite acknowledgement, but a resonant agreement, echoing through the chamber. Delegates from species as diverse as the galaxy itself came forward afterward, expressing a desire to learn more about the methodology of integrating emotion into research. Mira stepped down from the podium, her heart lighter, her mind buzzing with ideas and potential collaborations. This presentation had marked not just a professional success, but a personal milestone. She had crossed a bridge between worlds, between species, and in doing so, had begun to weave a new narrative, one that encompassed not just the logic of the mind, but the wisdom of the heart. In the weeks following the council meeting, Mira's proposal to integrate emotional data into interspecies research gained traction. She spearheaded a new initiative, dubbed the Emotive Cultural Exchange Program, designed to foster deeper understanding across the myriad cultures represented on the space station. Her collaboration with John had now expanded into a multidisciplinary team that included anthropologists, sociologists, and even artists from various planets. The initiative's first undertaking was an exhibition that showcased the rituals, art, and celebrations of different species, including humans. Mira took a hands-on approach, curating an interactive segment that simulated human emotional experiences through virtual reality, allowing participants to feel the emotions associated with human cultural practices. As the exhibition's opening day approached, Mira reviewed every detail meticulously. The main hall of the exhibition was filled with holographic displays, tactile interactive stations, and immersive environments. Each section was a gateway into the lives of another species, offering a visceral understanding that went beyond mere observation. The turnout was impressive. Beings from all corners of the galaxy roamed the exhibition, their reactions ranging from awe to empathy as they engaged with the displays. Mira watched a group of Zeltronians known for their emotional insensitivity as they experienced a virtual reality scenario of a human wedding. Their bewildered expressions slowly turned to ones of profound contemplation. John, who had been instrumental in setting up the human-centric exhibits, joined Mira by one of the displays. "You've outdone yourself," he said, surveying the bustling hall. "It's one thing to talk about integrating emotion into our work, but it's another to see it in action like this." Mira smiled, her eyes reflecting the colorful lights of the displays. "It's more than I hoped for. Seeing all these different beings engaging with our stories and sharing theirs, it's fulfilling in a way I hadn't anticipated." As the day progressed, Mira facilitated discussions and workshops, guiding attendees through the nuances of human emotional expressions and discussing the similarities and differences with their own. These interactions were enlightening, not just for the participants but for Mira as well. She realized that this exchange was a two-way street. As much as she was teaching, she was also learning, gaining insights into other cultures that were as complex and deep as humanity's. The exhibition concluded with a panel discussion featuring representatives from various species, including Mira and John. They discussed the impacts of the exhibition and the future of the Emotive Cultural Exchange Program. The consensus was clear. The initiative was a success and should be expanded. "We've started something remarkable here," Mira stated during the discussion. "This isn't just about understanding each other better. It's about building a community that acknowledges and respects the emotional spectra of all beings. Today, we've seen the potential of what we can achieve together." As the panel wrapped up, the audience's applause was not just in celebration of the event's success, but of a broader triumph, the breaking down of barriers and the fostering of a more empathetic and interconnected community. Later, as the hall emptied and the displays dimmed, Mira and John walked through the exhibition one last time. "Do you think we've changed anything?" Mira asked, her tone reflective. "We've started to," John replied. "Change is slow, especially with something as intricate as cultural understanding. But what we've done here, it's the first step, and that's how all journeys begin, with a single step." Mira nodded, looking around at the now quiet displays. This project had started as a challenge to her own understanding, but it had grown into something much greater, a bridge between worlds, built on the foundational belief that understanding and respecting our differences was the path forward. As the lights in the exhibition hall finally turned off, leaving only the soft glow of the emergency exits, Mira felt a sense of accomplishment and anticipation for the future. The path ahead was uncharted, but she was ready to continue this work, one heartfelt connection at a time.